Top 1. The Voynich Manuscript. In 1912, within the dimly lit library of the Villa Mondragone near Rome, an antiquarian named Wilfrid Voynich acquired a collection of ancient manuscripts. Among them was a book unlike any he or the world had ever seen. Written in an entirely unknown script and filled with bizarre botanical illustrations and anatomical diagrams, the manuscript radiated an eerie defiance of classification. The parchment, later carbon dated to the early 15th century, seemed to whisper a forgotten language that no one could read. But what unsettled scholars most wasn't the code, it was what the pages appeared to show. The Voynich manuscript, as it came to be known, spans over 200 pages. Its illustrations depict unknown plants, star charts, celestial cycles, and most disturbingly, human figures, predominantly women, immersed in interconnected biological systems. One fold-out diagram shows a multi-chambered structure eerily similar to the human lymphatic system, long before it was mapped by modern science. Another section presents what appears to be an embryonic development chart, with stages of fetal growth drawn in sequence, centuries ahead of anatomical discovery. Experts from around the world, including military code breakers and cryptologists from both world wars, attempted to decipher the text. All failed. In recent decades, artificial intelligence was deployed, and though some patterns were identified, no known language matched the structure. The script displayed linguistic complexity akin to natural languages, syntax, entropy, and recurring structure, yet remained entirely alien. It wasn't gibberish, but neither was it human, at least not any human language ever documented. As attention on the manuscript grew, so did the barriers around it. Several private institutions declined to release high-resolution scans. Requests for deeper spectral analysis were denied without explanation. Some researchers reported their access was abruptly revoked after publishing preliminary theories linking the manuscript to non-terrestrial linguistics. A former academic who claimed to have found a cipher within the botanical section was later dismissed and his paper scrubbed from multiple archives. The language of the Voynich, it seemed, was not just undeciphered, it was being actively protected. If the Voynich manuscript truly describes advanced biological processes, if it maps reproductive cycles, organ systems, and cosmic alignments, it implies one of two things. Either a now-lost human civilization once possessed scientific knowledge far ahead of its time, or the manuscript was given, not written. In either case, its existence threatens the linear model of human intellectual evolution. Why does a 15th century book contain information about organs only seen under modern microscopes? Why does its star map show celestial positions that would require telescopic aid? The questions are many, but the silence around the answers is louder. Top 2. The Vedas Atomic Hymn. Around 1500 BCE, in the northern plains of the Indian subcontinent, sages known as rishis composed the Vedas, sacred Sanskrit hymns passed down orally for generations before being committed to text. The Rig Veda, the oldest of these, contains hymns that praise the elements, describe cosmic battles, and pay homage to the laws of nature. But nestled within the verses lies something far more perplexing: descriptions of matter that mirror modern atomic theory, written over 3,000 years before the scientific method was born. One such reference is found in the Upanishads, the philosophical appendices to the Vedas, which describe a concept known as Anu and Paramanu. These terms refer to the smallest indivisible particles of matter, an idea strikingly similar to atoms and subatomic particles. The texts claim that everything in the universe is composed of these fundamental units, too small to be perceived but powerful in their combinations. They go further, speaking of the vibrational nature of reality and the interplay of forces that bind these particles together, echoing quantum field theories that would only emerge in the 20th century. More puzzling still are hymns that describe the cosmos as layered in frequencies, with light and sound being forms of energy that traverse these layers. The ancient Sanskrit term spanda refers to a primordial vibration, described not as metaphor, but as a literal force underlying all existence. These writings also divide matter into 5 subtle elements: ether, air, fire, water, and earth, not just as classical elements, but as gradations of energy density. The system eerily aligns with the modern idea of states of matter and energy fields. When British and German Orientalists first translated these verses in the 19th century, they dismissed such passages as poetic metaphor. But as atomic theory developed and quantum mechanics followed, some physicists began to take a second look. Niels Bohr himself reportedly admired the depth of Indian metaphysics. Yet despite growing academic interest, institutional acceptance remained elusive. Proposals to integrate Vedic atomic theory into comparative philosophy or history of science were quietly denied funding. University departments cited lack of empirical foundation, though few had studied the texts in their original context. Some scholars who pushed the theory further, suggesting that Indian sages had access to observational tools or cognitive techniques long forgotten, found themselves abruptly marginalized. Journals declined their submissions, conferences rescinded invitations. A 1987 Indian academic paper comparing Upanishadic atomic theory with early Greek atomism vanished from library shelves, with catalog entries altered to show never acquired. If the atomic ideas in the Vedas are not coincidental, then human understanding of matter did not begin in modern Europe, but in ancient temples under starlit skies. And if ancient thinkers could conceive such advanced concepts without instrumentation, what kind of consciousness were they operating from? Could the seer scientists of the Vedic age access a form of knowledge not derived from experiment but from direct perception? This possibility remains profoundly unsettling, because it suggests that science, real science, may not have begun with microscopes and formulas, but with silence, breath, and stillness. Top 3. The Dendra Light in the heart of Upper Egypt, within the sacred walls of the Temple of Hathor at Dendra, lies a chamber carved with symbols unlike any found elsewhere in ancient Egyptian iconography. Among the hieroglyphs, snakes, lotus flowers, ankhs, there is a series of carved reliefs that has ignited fierce debate for over a century. These panels, first photographed in the 19th century, depict what appear to be elongated glass bulbs, each containing a serpent-like filament stretching from one end to the other. Beneath the bulbs, figures hold them up using pillar-like stands. To the modern eye, the resemblance is uncanny. These carvings look like massive electric light bulbs. The so-called Dendera light has become one of Egyptology's most controversial anomalies. Traditional scholars insist the imagery is symbolic, representing lotus flowers birthing serpents, or metaphors for spiritual energy. But independent researchers and electrical engineers have proposed a radically different view. They argue the reliefs show actual electrical devices, early vacuum tube-style lamps powered by a primitive energy source. The supporting pillars resemble insulators, while other figures appear to be holding cables or coils. This theory gains more weight when viewed alongside the so-called Baghdad battery, a clay pot with a copper cylinder and iron rod discovered in Iraq, which could produce a small voltage when filled with acidic liquid. If such rudimentary batteries existed in Mesopotamia, could the Egyptians have used similar technology to power lighting systems deep inside the temples? Temples that show no trace of soot, wax, or oil smoke? Indeed, many internal chambers of Egyptian temples, including those of Dendera and Abydos, are far too deep and complex to have been illuminated by torches alone. The walls are immaculate, showing no blackening typical of flame-based light sources. Engineers attempting to recreate temple lighting using mirrors or torches found the methods impractical, too dim, too smoky. The hypothesis of electric lighting, once dismissed as pseudoscience, began to seem oddly plausible. But when the Dendera reliefs began attracting serious attention in the 1970s, things changed. Access to the chamber was restricted. Certain photographs vanished from museum catalogs. A German documentary that filmed the interior in high detail was abruptly pulled from television rotation. Archaeologists who speculated publicly about lost Egyptian technology saw research grants dry up. The official line hardened. The reliefs were mythological, nothing more. Yet satellite imaging revealed faint linear patterns beneath the sands near Dendera, possible remnants of a grid-like infrastructure. Rumors emerged that a sealed chamber beneath the temple remains off-limits, even to Egyptian archaeologists. Whispers of ancient generators, copper coils, and even crystalline conductors persist, though no physical evidence has ever been disclosed. If the Dendera light was indeed a real electrical device, it forces a dramatic reassessment of Egypt's technological capacity. It suggests that their understanding of energy may have included principles long lost or suppressed. It also raises an even deeper question: why illuminate temple walls with images of gods in resurrection chambers? Who or what was that light meant to reveal? Top 4. The Han Dynasty Propulsion. Scroll in the year 32 to CE during the reign of Emperor Guangwu of the Eastern Han Dynasty, a scroll known as the Jiqi Zhilun, translated roughly as Treatise on Engine Principles, was reportedly presented to the imperial court. The text, attributed to a reclusive inventor named Kong Shen, was said to describe a flying chariot, powered not by animals or magic, but by wind captured and redirected through curved metal ducts. Although dismissed at the time as a fantasy or allegory, the scroll disappeared into imperial archives and remained unknown to the wider world for centuries. That changed in the 1970s when a cache of forgotten manuscripts was uncovered in a sealed room of the Dunhuang Library caves. Among medical texts and Buddhist sutras was a fragmented version of Kong Shen's treatise. What remained were damaged but legible passages describing motion from within and diagrams of cylindrical devices fitted with rotating blades. The accompanying ink sketches bore an unsettling resemblance to jet propulsion mechanisms, centuries before such concepts were supposed to exist. The scroll described capturing the sky's breath and spinning force to lift the frame above the earth. Modern aerospace engineers who reviewed the imagery in unofficial channels noted the presence of axial flow channels, intake vents, and exhaust designs consistent with early thrust vectoring concepts. One annotated drawing even showed a capsule-like vessel with stabilizing fins and what appeared to be an ignition chamber. Chinese academic institutions initially expressed enthusiasm, proposing the treatise as a valuable artifact of early technological thought. But within a year, discussions about the scroll's implications were silenced. The incomplete manuscript was quietly removed from museum displays. Articles referencing it in scientific journals were pulled offline, with digital backups erased from library databases. Researchers who had commented on the scroll's engineering potential retracted their statements, often citing new information that was never disclosed. Access to the original Dunhuang scroll was later reclassified under heritage protection laws. Independent archaeologists attempting to revisit the cave complex were denied permits. Unconfirmed reports surfaced of military vehicles stationed near the area for preservation enforcement. Whistleblowers claimed that a more complete version of the treatise had been relocated to a state research facility in Beijing. No official statements were made. If the Jiqi Zhilun is authentic, it presents a stunning possibility that ancient China may have toyed with principles of propulsion long before the industrial age. But how did such knowledge emerge in a time without metallurgy capable of surviving combustion heat? Was Kong Shen merely a brilliant mind ahead of his era, or did he have access to insights that were not his own? There's a line in the scroll, almost poetic, that continues to haunt those who have seen it. The bird does not ask the sky how to fly. It knows for something once whispered it long ago. Top 5. The Greek Lens Manuscript. In 1896, while cataloging artifacts in the ruins of a forgotten library beneath the island of Delos, archaeologists uncovered a fragmentary scroll written in Doric Greek. The document, now known as the Opticon Treatise, appeared at first to be a philosophical reflection on sight and perception. But deeper analysis revealed something far more astonishing. The text contained precise descriptions of manipulating light through curved crystal surfaces to magnify that which is hidden by distance. In other words, it described a lens, one fashioned not for reading or decoration, but for long-range viewing. This timeline is deeply problematic. The earliest confirmed invention of the telescope is attributed to Hans Lippershey in the early 17th century, nearly 2,000 years after the Greek manuscript's creation. Yet the Opticon Treatise not only outlines the basic principles of refraction and focal length, but includes calculations for polishing angles, compound curvature, and diagrams of tubes fitted with double lenses. One sketch even shows a multi-lens system mounted on a tripod-like stand pointed toward the stars. When first presented to the Hellenic Academy in Athens in 1901, the scroll was heralded as a marvel. It was compared to the Antikythera mechanism, another Greek anomaly with astronomical functions far beyond its time. But unlike that bronze computer, the Opticon treatise did not survive long in public view. Within months, the scroll was recalled for reauthentication, and official documentation ceased. Scholars who had handled it were told to cease further publication. The manuscript itself was never returned to the Delos archive. Unofficial accounts from museum staff in Athens claim that the document was transported under military escort to an undisclosed facility, allegedly for preservation under national interest. Copies of early photographs were purged from academic records. One linguist who attempted to publish a full translation was sued for unauthorized use of protected cultural material, despite the scroll never being formally classified as such. But perhaps the most telling clue lies not in the scroll, but in the archaeological debris surrounding it. Alongside the Opticon treatise were shards of clear quartz, shaped and ground with surprising symmetry. Spectral analysis later leaked from a private lab suggested they had been formed using controlled heat, not the crude abrasives typical of ancient stonework. Moreover, the shards matched the radius of curvature proposed in the treatise's diagrams. If the ancient Greeks possessed not only the theory of optics, but the ability to manufacture telescopic lenses, it would upend our understanding of scientific progress. It would suggest that Pythagoras, Euclid, or even earlier thinkers might have peered at Jupiter's moons long before Galileo ever looked skyward. The implications are staggering. What might have been seen and recorded through such a device? Could the knowledge contained in the Opticon treatise have once shaped philosophical or theological beliefs now lost? Or perhaps the manuscript was a relic of something even older, passed down from a civilization whose instruments were carved not from ambition, but memory. Whatever the truth, one thing is certain. Someone did not want humanity to read too far into the stars, too soon. Top 6. The Sumerian Sky Charts. In 1880, in the ruins of the ancient Sumerian city of Sippar, archaeologists unearthed a collection of cuneiform tablets buried beneath layers of ash and broken stone. Among them was a curious tablet that stood out from the rest, not for its size, but for the startling precision of its contents. Labeled by the team as Tablet K8538, it featured a circular diagram divided into segments, peppered with celestial symbols and mathematical notations. When translated, it was revealed to be a star chart, a map of the night sky from the perspective of Earth. But something was wrong. The chart didn't match the skies of the ancient world. It matched our skies. The positions of the stars, the depiction of planetary alignments, even the mention of a dark wanderer beyond Saturn, what we now call Pluto, did not align with what a naked-eye observer in 2000 BCE could possibly have known. And yet the Sumerians had recorded it in baked clay, using pictograms with eerie accuracy. The object was eventually dubbed the Sumerian Sky Chart, and its authenticity was never in question. What was questioned, however, was how they had created it. The most unsettling feature of the tablet was its mention of a companion of the sun that moved slowly across the heavens every 248 years, a near match for Pluto's actual orbital cycle. Pluto was not officially discovered until 1930. Furthermore, the tablet included corrections for retrograde motion, mathematical adjustments only necessary if you were tracking the visible wandering of planets through a telescope. But the Sumerians had no telescopes, no lenses, no known means of celestial magnification, or so we believed. Scholars initially dismissed the chart as ceremonial or symbolic, but pressure mounted when computational reconstructions proved the positions accurate for a specific date, June 29, 2024 BCE. This meant either the Sumerians had achieved an impossible level of astronomical knowledge through pure observation, or they had access to a tradition or technology lost to history. Then, inexplicably, access to the tablet was restricted. It was transferred from the British Museum's Mesopotamian collection to an off-site archive under the banner of preservation concerns. High-resolution images disappeared from their database. One researcher who attempted to recreate the chart using 3D modeling software received a cease and desist letter, citing unauthorized use of sensitive cultural data. Satellite surveys of the Sipar site were later halted under military orders. Local dig teams were replaced by anonymous contractors, and reports from nearby towns spoke of helicopters transporting sealed crates under heavy guard. If the Sumerian sky chart is legitimate, it suggests that ancient humans not only observed, but deeply understood the heavens. They mapped planetary cycles, recorded eclipses with minute precision, and perhaps even tracked objects far beyond visible range. How? The possibilities are few, and none of them sit comfortably within accepted history. One chilling hypothesis remains unspoken in scholarly circles, that the Sumerians didn't discover this knowledge, but were taught it. By who or what, no one dares to say aloud. Top 7. The Book of Enoch's Star Maps. In 1773, Scottish explorer James Bruce returned from Ethiopia, carrying 3 ancient manuscripts, among them a nearly complete copy of the Book of Enoch, a text long thought lost to history. Written in Ge'ez, the sacred language of Ethiopia, the manuscript contained visions, allegories, and astronomical records that stunned the European scholars of the time. But one section stood out from all the rest: the Book of the Heavenly Luminaries. It described the movement of the sun, moon, stars, and winds, not as divine metaphors, but with uncanny precision. What Enoch described wasn't mythology, it was astronomy. The text spoke of windows of heaven through which the sun passed during solstices and equinoxes, and of stars that moved in fixed cycles, 24 in total, each governed by an angelic entity. These were not poetic abstractions. The durations of daylight and the changing positions of constellations were documented with mathematical regularity. Some calculations matched the solar year to within a fraction of a day, centuries before the Julian calendar. More baffling were passages that described wandering stars falling from the sky, bound and imprisoned beneath mountains. Today, these are often interpreted as fallen angels. But another possibility arises. Were these descriptions of meteor impacts or even failed technological craft observed by early humans? One passage describes a being who measured the vault of the heavens and taught men the signs of the earth and the secrets of the sun, phrases that have been linked to early geodesy and solar mechanics. The most disturbing parts of Enoch's text are his journeys through multiple heavens, layers of reality, each with different laws of time, space, and energy. In the 5th heaven, time passes differently. In the 7th, Enoch sees a blinding light he cannot describe. In modern terms, some have interpreted this as a multidimensional cosmology, a primitive yet strangely aligned concept with today's theories of wormholes and higher dimensional physics. When the text gained traction in European academic circles, something strange happened. Despite its early popularity among early Christian thinkers, the Book of Enoch was excluded from both the Jewish and Christian canons. The reasons given were theological, but privately some scholars cited discomfort with its descriptions of beings descending from the sky to teach mankind forbidden knowledge, what it called the secrets of heaven. Subsequent retranslations of the text were delayed, then quietly shelved. In the 20th century, major academic presses passed on critical editions. A proposed UNESCO project to digitally preserve the Ge'ez manuscripts was inexplicably defunded. One Ethiopian monk who had guided Western researchers through the archives was later found dead under unexplained circumstances near Lake Tana. Today, the Book of Enoch remains on the fringe of mainstream theology and science, acknowledged but never embraced. And yet, for those who read it carefully, it offers something far more dangerous than heresy: a map of the stars that hints at ancient contact, dimensional travel, or a memory humanity was never meant to keep. If Enoch was simply hallucinating, his visions are an astonishing coincidence. If he wasn't, then he walked among beings whose origins remain unknown and whose knowledge reshaped the skies. Top 8. The Tully Papyrus. In the 1930s, while studying Egyptian antiquities in the Vatican Museum, Alberto Tully, the museum's director of the Egyptian section, reportedly came across a curious papyrus in a Cairo antiquities shop. Lacking the funds to purchase it, he copied it by hand. That transcription, now known as the Tully Papyrus, would later surface in academic circles and spark one of the most enduring controversies in Egyptology. Its content seemed implausible, if not impossible. a first-person account from the reign of Pharaoh Thutmose III, describing a circle of fire that appeared in the sky over Egypt. The original document, dated to around 1480 BCE, describes multiple fiery disks moving silently across the heavens. The text reads, "They were more numerous than anything. They shone in the sky more than the brightness of the sun and extended to the limits of the four supports of heaven." The account continues with the king ordering his scribes to record the phenomenon in the House of Life, Egypt's sacred archive. These objects reportedly remained visible for days, then rose higher in the sky and moved toward the south. To modern eyes, this was unmistakably a record of unidentified aerial phenomena. The account did not use the language of divine omens or symbolic visions. Instead, it was methodical, administrative, and unsettlingly clear. There was no interpretation offered, no allegory, just a factual report of an event that defied every known natural explanation. Skeptics immediately dismissed the document as a hoax or misinterpretation. After all, the original papyrus was never found, only Tully's handwritten copy. However, handwriting experts confirmed the transcription was consistent with Tully's known documents, and the language structure aligned with other official records from the same dynasty. Still, Egyptologists refused to endorse its authenticity. Requests to search the Vatican archives for the original were denied. Tully himself passed away before he could publish a full analysis. Years later, Italian author and researcher Boris de Raschwilz claimed to have discovered Tully's notes and translations among his personal papers. But before any high-resolution scans or carbon analysis could be performed, the materials vanished during a private estate transfer. No institution has admitted to receiving them. Attempts to verify the papyrus through official channels continue to be stonewalled, with many Egyptologists labeling the entire episode unverifiable folklore. Yet the pattern matches other ancient records, from Mesopotamian sky disks to medieval woodcuts, of luminous, silent craft appearing above populated areas, often observed by multiple witnesses and quickly forgotten or reclassified as myth. The difference here is that the Tully Papyrus was a royal chronicle, not a folk tale. It was meant to record truth, not inspire awe. If the papyrus is authentic, it stands as one of the earliest recorded sightings of a phenomenon that persists to this day. And if Thutmose III's scribes truly saw what they described, then we are forced to confront a chilling question. Who was watching Egypt at the height of its power, and why? Top 9. The Mayan, codices, and DNA symbols. In the humid jungles of southern Mexico, buried beneath centuries of vine-choked stone, 3 surviving pre-Columbian manuscripts, the Dresden, Madrid, and Paris codices, remain among the few surviving records of the ancient Mayas' advanced knowledge. These folding books, written on bark cloth and inscribed with hieroglyphic texts, have long been recognized for their astronomical precision. They chart eclipses, planetary alignments, and lunar cycles with a mathematical accuracy that continues to astonish modern scientists. But recent high-resolution scans revealed something far more controversial: visual patterns that bear a striking resemblance to modern representations of DNA. In several pages of the Dresden Codex, serpentine shapes spiral around central axes. These double helix-like figures are flanked by glyphs associated with life, rebirth, and the weaving of existence. Accompanying these images are depictions of divine beings using tools or threads to bind the strands together, scenes that eerily parallel modern depictions of genetic engineering or biological programming. In one panel, 2 figures hold what appears to be a coiled cord suspended between them, its loops perfectly mirroring the dimensions of a DNA turn when scaled proportionally. Skeptics argue these are symbolic metaphors: snakes, umbilical cords, or cosmological spirals. But when overlaid with molecular diagrams of nucleotides and base pair sequences, the resemblance becomes unsettling. Especially when you consider the Maya also believed that human beings were written into creation and that divine scribes composed the world using a sacred alphabet of energies and codes. Further complicating matters is the discovery of a mural at Bonampak, a major Mayan archaeological site. In one chamber, a wall painting shows a humanoid figure lying on a stone slab, surrounded by others manipulating beams of light or fluid strands emanating from his body. At first dismissed as ritualistic sacrifice, some now interpret it as a symbolic rendering of bodily modification. perhaps even healing or experimentation. Academic institutions have consistently resisted interpretations that connect Mayan art with molecular biology. Proposals to conduct comparative studies between codex imagery and genetic structures have been rejected as pseudoscientific. Museums housing the codices have limited digital access to high-resolution imagery. Independent researchers who suggested deeper biological meanings have been ostracized or labeled fringe theorists. But the Mayan worldview complicates the modern dismissal. To them, existence was interwoven with vibration, frequency, and sacred geometry. The gods themselves were described as weavers of flesh, who stitched the human form with luminous threads. Could this metaphor conceal a deeper truth? Could it be that the Maya, through altered states of consciousness or unknown instruments, glimpsed the hidden architecture of life? If so, then what we see in their codices is not myth, but memory, a biological blueprint encoded in art, waiting for the eyes of a future generation to understand. Top 10. The Nag Hammadi Scrolls. In 1945, near the Egyptian town of Nag Hammadi, a farmer digging for fertilizer unearthed a sealed clay jar. Inside were 13 leather-bound papyrus codices, later dated to the 3rd and 4th centuries AD. These texts, written in Coptic, contained gospels and writings that had been lost for nearly 2 millennia. Alternative accounts of creation, consciousness, and reality that diverged radically from the canonical Bible. Among them were cryptic descriptions of entities known as archons, reality manipulation, and a concept that has since become disturbingly relevant: the illusion of the world. One document in particular, the Apocryphon of John, offers an unsettling narrative. It describes a false god, an imposter creator, who fabricates the material world not out of benevolence, but to trap consciousness. Humanity, it says, is ensnared in a simulated realm constructed by these lesser beings who feed on human ignorance and fear. The real divine source, referred to only as the invisible spirit, exists beyond perception in a realm of pure awareness. The scrolls are rife with terminology that resonates with concepts now explored in quantum theory, simulation hypothesis, and cognitive neuroscience. They speak of layers of perception, projections mistaken for truth, and a veil, literally called the Hal, that blinds human awareness. In one passage, the archons are described as masters of counterfeit reality, capable of crafting entire lifetimes of illusion. The text suggests that only through gnosis, direct inner knowing, can one break free from the artificial matrix. Such radical ideas were too dangerous for the early church. By the 4th century, Gnostic teachings were branded heresy, and most of their texts were destroyed. The Nag Hammadi scrolls survived only because they were buried, hidden from both Roman authorities and later inquisitions. After their discovery, the scrolls were studied under tight control. For decades, access was restricted to a handful of approved scholars. Full translations were delayed. Some texts were not released to the public until the 1990s, sparking suspicions of deliberate suppression. To this day, interpretations of the Nag Hammadi library remain contested. Mainstream theologians often frame the scrolls as poetic or metaphorical, while alternative researchers argue they contain literal warnings, transmitted by a forgotten spiritual elite that had seen too much. The language, though ancient, feels contemporary. Words like imitation world, architect of deception, and awakening through rupture read like philosophical science fiction, or a hidden manual for escaping something none of us fully understand. What if the Gnostics weren't mystics lost in abstraction, but early observers of the mechanics of reality? What if their texts describe what we now call simulated universes, non-human intelligences, and consciousness entrapment? These were not myths. These were manuals, and they were buried on purpose. Because if what the Apocryphon of John says is true, then the world around us is not just misunderstood, it is constructed, and whoever built it never intended for us to question the blueprints. These 10 texts, scattered across continents and centuries, form more than just a list of strange coincidences. They reveal a pattern, one that challenges everything we know about human history, cognition, and science. From Sumerian tablets predicting planetary orbits to scrolls that whisper of synthetic realities, Each manuscript contains fragments of a larger narrative, one that has been erased, hidden, or denied. This is not a story of random anomalies. It is the architecture of forgotten knowledge. Each document, whether etched in stone, scrawled in papyrus, or folded into sacred codices, reveals advanced understanding where none should exist. Atomic theory in the hymns of the Vedas, electric light in the temples of Dendera, DNA helixes in Mayan iconography, telescopic design in ancient Greek scrolls, and a simulated cosmos in the suppressed Gnostic Gospels. These aren't isolated flashes of brilliance. They are echoes of something older, something systematically dismantled from collective memory. And the response? Silence. Restrictions, reclassifications, academic exile. The moment a manuscript hints at pre-modern advanced knowledge, it vanishes from public access or is redefined into metaphor. Museums lock drawers, universities retract funding, translations stall. The hand that holds the eraser moves swiftly and without name. If these texts are true, we've lost more than stories. We've lost possibility. Possibility that ancient civilizations once harnessed clean energy, decoded biological structures, or glimpsed the edges of dimensional space. Possibility that humanity is not the first, nor the only, to ask dangerous questions about the nature of reality. Each text hidden is a timeline diverted. Each idea silenced is a future that might have been. And yet pieces remain, buried under desert sands, trapped in monastery walls, etched in symbols no one can fully translate. They are not waiting to be understood, they are waiting to be remembered. Because perhaps the real threat isn't that these ancient manuscripts contain lies, it's that they contain too much truth. If these accounts of suppressed history and ancient wisdom have changed the way you look at the world, please subscribe and like the channel. We are dedicated to uncovering the history they tried to bury. Let's plant the seeds of the future together. The next hidden treasure will be revealed soon.